Hello everyone, my name is Jay. I'm one of the expert OET teachers here at E2 Language. In this lesson, we're going to learn how to pass OET writing, and we're going to do that by looking at the checklist the examiners use when they're marking your writing. Because if you know what they want to see and you put that in your letter, well, your chances of success are going to be much higher. So let's go through the new OET writing criteria part by part. So how to pass OET writing. So this table here is, well, it's difficult to interpret, it's difficult to understand, but this is what the examiners use when they're marking your writing. I'm going to break this down and make it simple for you. So in short, there are 6 criteria that your writing is marked against. First one is called purpose, then content, conciseness and clarity, genre and style, organization and layout, and language. Now, you're scored for purpose from 0 to 3. So 0, 1, 2, or 3. Content, conciseness, genre and style, organization, and language are scored from 0 to 7. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, or 7. Now, if you're aiming for a B, an OET B, which is the equivalent of 350 to 440, or the equivalent of an IELTS 7 to 7.5, you need to get on average 2 out of 3 for purpose, and on average, or at least 5 out of 7 for all of the other criteria. So, in short, you need to know what these are and you need to be able to satisfy each of them, because if you score poorly in just one of them but score 5 out of 7 for the rest, that's going to be problematic. So let's make sure you understand each of these criteria in detail so you know what to do on test day. Let's look at purpose first. This is scored from 0 to 3. So how we're going to do this is we're going to use a model letter from the official OET website, okay? So this is a very high quality model letter. So let's use this as our example and think about purpose. And the first part of purpose says the purpose of your letter is immediately apparent. The purpose of your letter is immediately apparent. So after you have written the formal stuff like the address and the name of the recipient and the dear Dr. So-and-so regarding patient X, blah, 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 that first paragraph or that first sentence needs to have immediate meaning and purpose. For example, this is from the official model letter. It says, Mr. Lionel Ramamurthy was admitted on the 4th of February 2019, having contracted pneumonia. He is now ready for discharge back into your care tomorrow. You can see that this simple paragraph of 2 sentences has immediate meaning. The purpose is immediate. That's good. So the second part of purpose then is that the letter, the purpose needs to be sufficiently expanded. What I mean by that is you take your first paragraph, the one we just read, for example, and what you need to do is you need to expand upon that. You need to extrapolate. You need to show more details on this particular bit of information. So for example, you could write, on admission, he was experiencing fevers and rigors. He suffered dyspnea, wheezing, and sleeplessness. He had chest and abdominal pain due to prolonged persistent coughing. Now, here we run into a little bit of a problem. Lots of you like to use templates, and a lot of the teachers out there in OET land are teaching you to write according to templates. This is where, in this exam, you cannot use a template. There is no such thing as what is paragraph 2? Paragraph 2 is always the medical history, for example. Paragraph 3 is always the social history. That is not true. What you're doing here is you're thinking about the task, you're interpreting the case notes, you're thinking about the main purpose of the letter, and also what needs to be done by the recipient. And here, for example, you can see in the second paragraph that there is no template. It depends on that purpose of the letter and your ability to expand upon that purpose in the second paragraph there. You can only do this on test day by being flexible and reading carefully and thinking about who you're writing to and why. Cool, so that's a good one. Okay, then after purpose, you have content, which is scored from 0 to 7. Before we look at that, I want to show you the mini mock test with feedback that we have just produced. This is a brand new tool and it's totally fabulous. Just give me 30 seconds to show you how it works. Okay, so if you've never taken the OET test before, you should check out e2language.com and think about taking the OET mini mock test with feedback. First of all, it gives you a really quick and good snapshot of all your skills here. So it doesn't just tell you what you got for listening or reading, writing, speaking, but it actually breaks it down by subtest. More importantly, you can actually click on each of the subtests and you can see your answers versus the correct answers, and you can find out what you're doing right and wrong. And for reading and speaking, this is really awesome. What happens is one of our teachers actually marks your writing, for example, according to the criteria that we're talking about now, and will tell you, for example, how good your paragraph on purpose is, with a high, medium, and low score, and some comments. And how it works for speaking is you would take a one-on-one speaking mock test with one of our OET experts. You'll actually do the role play, and then after that, the teacher will go through and mark the rubric or the criteria according to speaking, which is kind of similar to writing, and you'll get a score report like this. Cool. Anyway, I just wanted to show you what the mini mock test with feedback looks like and how it works. It's really cool. Check out e2language.com if you think you might need to take one. Okay, let's get back to this. All right, so for content, the content of your letter is appropriate. It needs to be appropriate to your intended reader. What does that mean? Well, that depends on the task. You can see here that we're writing to a resident community nurse. So everything that we include in that letter should be appropriate for this particular reader. Think about it. So maybe you're writing to a radiographer, for example, or a physiotherapist or a pharmacist. So whoever you're writing to, you need to keep that recipient in mind, select case notes according to that particular person, right? So that's a part of content, knowing who you're writing to. Another part of content is that the content of your letter addresses what is needed to continue care. That is, key information is included, no important details are missing. So case note selection here is critical. And most critical is that you don't leave out any important case notes. So you can see here that in this one, taken from the official OET website, what is needed to continue care is included here. You can see in yellow, paracetamol may be administered, he should be kept warm, please encourage oral fluids, ensure that he sits up, he should ambulate regularly. Okay, and there's one more here. He will need ongoing monitoring of his diet. All right, so the content of your letter also needs to accurately represent the case notes. This is about interpretation. So when you get your case notes on test day, they won't be written in full, perfect phrases and sentences. They're often in sort of shorthand with symbols and abbreviations. So it's up to you to interpret them correctly and to make sure you know what's going on with that particular patient's history and the particular scenario that you're looking at that moment. So for example, with this discharge plan that says paracetamol if necessary for chest abdominal pain, keep warm, good nutrition, more fluids, eggs, fruit, veg, needs help monitoring diet. Now, have a look at this one that I've written, which is wrong. It says, Mr. Ramamurthy took too many painkillers and injured his chest and abdomen. He has been kept warm and his nutrition has improved over time. This is all a misinterpretation of the case notes. So I'm not accurately representing them. I would be scored poorly for this. Okay, let's look at conciseness and clarity here. What does that mean? Well, firstly, the length of your letter is appropriate to the case and reader. Again, no irrelevant information is included, no relevant information is excluded. What I mean by this really is we're talking about the length of the letter, okay? Because if you're selecting case notes appropriately and you're not leaving out important case notes, the body of your letter should be approximately 180 to 200 words. If you're writing significantly shorter than that, it probably means that you're leaving case notes out or you're not expanding your sentences enough. And if you're writing way more than 200 words, it means you're including irrelevant information or your sentences are just far too long and flowery. You need to make sure you do a bit of practice before test day. And what I mean by the body of your letter is after the address, after the dear doctor, after regarding patient X, starts there with that introductory purpose statement and goes all the way down to yours sincerely. That is the body of the letter. You're not actually graded on word count per se. You're not if you go over 200 or under 180. But what it is an approximation of how much information you have put in and how efficient you are with your writing. Cool. 3B, you summarized information effectively. So for example, look at these case notes here. Okay, so medical background, admitted with pneumonia, acute shortness of breath, inspiratory and expiratory wheezing, persistent cough, chest and abdominal pain, fever, rigors, sleeplessness, generalized ache. Let's summarize this effectively. On admission, he was experiencing fevers and rigors. He suffered dyspnea, wheezing, and sleeplessness. He had chest and abdominal pain due to prolonged persistent coughing. That's good. Okay, let's look at 3C. You clearly presented information. This is a paragraph taken from the official OET model letter, okay? Let's look at how well this paragraph flows from sentence to sentence and has logical internal coherence. That is, in and of itself, this paragraph makes sense. In and of itself, it's kind of like a little story, okay? Let's read it. It says, after a week in hospital, he has stabilized and his breathing problems are now resolved. However, he still experiences some chest and abdominal pain with a dry cough. His nursing management in hospital initially consisted of a walking frame and assistance with showering and dressing. Mr. Ramamurthy is now more independent. He's also able to walk about slowly without assistance and shower and use the toilet independently. Cool. You can see how well written that paragraph is. You can see how clearly the information is presented. It's not mixed up, it's not convoluted, it's not confusing. Okay, let's look at the fourth thing that the OET assessors look at when they're marking your writing. It's genre and style, and they mark it from 0 to 7. Okay, so your writing needs to be clinical and factual. Check these case notes out here for the discharge plan. We saw them before. Imagine if you wrote something like this. Make sure you give Mr. Ramamurthy paracetamol. Don't forget to keep him warm. Lastly, he might need more fruit, but because he might have high blood sugar, I wouldn't recommend this. He also drinks too much alcohol. Okay, what I've written here isn't clinical. I've put in too much of my own opinion, and I've actually been judgmental in that final sentence where I said he drinks too much alcohol. So that's not clinical. And also, have I been factual? Where I've written he might have high blood sugar, I wouldn't recommend this. This wasn't actually part of the case notes here. So I'm not being factual. I'm bringing in stuff that comes from my own experience. It might be true. However, what you have to work with are those case notes and those case notes only. So if you're going to put in, don't put in your own medical opinion about the patient, okay? Only write and only use what is given in those case notes and that task, okay? And no opinion and no judgments, okay? Nothing judgmental about the patient. Okay, your writing needs to be appropriate to the reader's discipline and knowledge. So imagine if you're writing to a specialist, right? If you're a nurse or a GP, you're writing to a specialist and you write something like, dear specialist, let me tell you what's what. Firstly, do this. Secondly, I think you should do that. This kind of goes back to formality and tone, which we'll talk about in a second. But if you are writing to a specialist, you need to be careful not to tell them to do something. You can tell them to do something, but you need to frame it in a way where it's more like a request or a suggestion rather than a direct instruction, okay? And also, what you need to do is think about who you're writing to. So this is about keeping the reader in mind at all times. and only including information and writing in such a way that it's appropriate to that particular person, okay? This is a part of genre and style. Also, you should use technical terms, abbreviations, and a polite language appropriately for the reader. So again, it's about appropriateness. So if you're looking at a technical term or an abbreviation and it's universal, like SOB for shortness of breath, for example, that's okay. If it's a local abbreviation or technical term, and I mean local as in even to your country, then don't use it. The basic rule is here, when you're thinking about a technical term or abbreviation, if it's just universally known, fine, put it in. And if it's in the case notes, it's probably okay. If it's not, and you're sort of thinking, I wonder if somebody from another country would know what that is, don't include it. It's much safer to expand those abbreviations out rather than include them. Now with politeness, you need to think about the tone. The tone needs to be formal, not overly formal, but also it definitely shouldn't be informal. Okay, so things like contractions you might want to expand. Phrasal verbs, you might want to use the basic verb instead, for example. Okay, let's talk about organization and layout, which is scored from 0 to 7. I'm going to do this by actually showing you the letter here, because this is how the letter should look on test day. There's a few little things. For example, you might put the date. It doesn't really matter. You might put the date here. That doesn't matter. Or you might put the re-patient actually here. That doesn't matter. And whether you use a dot after doctor doesn't really matter, okay? What the OET examiners really care about is this part here, whether you've written the body of the letter well or not. But anyway, let's go through the technical formalities here. So your organization needs to be appropriate, logical, and clear. Now, again, there is no template for this letter. The letter depends on the task. It depends on you identify the purpose here, you expand the purpose in the following one, and then this paragraph, this paragraph, this paragraph, and whatever other paragraphs you might have just depend on the case notes and task at hand, okay? Again, you need to be flexible. Also, you want to be logical. What you're really doing here is you're telling a story to the intended reader from beginning to end, okay? So think about it as a narrative. You open up with the purpose and the main reason for writing. You expand upon that. You include other information. And you typically finish with a request at the end here, okay? And that's your story that you're telling. Just bear in mind or keep in mind that whether or not the person you are writing to knows the patient or not. Is it the first time you're introducing the patient to this person? Or do they already know a lot of the information in the case notes because it's the patient's GP, for example? Just keep that in mind as well. Okay, key information needs to be highlighted. What I mean by that is that important information should be prioritized and put towards the top of the letter. That's why this purpose paragraph is so important. And that's why you need to expand upon it here, because key information needs to be brought to the top of the letter. Also, when you're thinking about writing paragraphs, think about it from most important at the top here to probably least important down here. Structure your paragraphs like that as well. That's how you highlight key information. Your subsections need to be well organized. What that means quite simply is you've got to have this separated, have your purpose paragraph, your expanded purpose separate, your next paragraph separate. I don't know how many paragraphs you're going to have on test day, but just keep them separate and keep the requests separate as well. Lastly, your letter needs to be well laid out. Let's just quickly go through this. So we've got the recipient's name, the recipient's address here. We've got the date. Again, the date can go at the top. It doesn't matter. We've got the dear doctor. We've got the regarding the patient, age 63. And then we have our paragraphing. And then we have the, if you have any queries, please contact me. Yours sincerely, charge nurse. You should know this well and truly before test day. In fact, all of this and this final part here can be done in about 1 minute if you know what you're doing. That will leave 39 minutes to focus on the most important part, which is the body of the letter anyway, okay? If you need more help on how to format those letters, check out e2language.com. We'll show you exactly how to do it. Oh, and I should also mention that if you join our live classes, which happen twice a day, morning and night, UK friendly times, Australia friendly times, Asia friendly times, the teacher will show you this in those live classes. Okay, let's have a look at language now. So most of you are probably concerned about grammar and vocabulary and sentence structure. And to a certain extent you should be, but you can see here it's just one of 6 criteria. Let's go through this. Okay, so your overall language use makes meaning clear. That's just like an umbrella one. That's what you should do. Be thinking about clarity at all times. Your vocabulary needs to be precise. Your grammar needs to be accurate. Your sentence structures need to be accurate. Your spelling needs to be accurate. Your punctuation needs to be accurate. What I can tell you here is that if you have taken the IELTS recently, you've written or you've been practicing writing IELTS essays, in the IELTS essays, you need to show off your vocabulary range and precision and your grammatical range, like using lots of sentence types and conditional sentences and question sentences and different verb tenses. In OET writing, it's different. What it is about clarity. It's about making your meaning immediately apparent and clear, right? You should be able to look at that letter and just very quickly understand what's going on. So you don't need to write any of those complex compound sentences like you need to do in the IELTS test. Don't just write all simple sentences. You should include some different structures for variety, but just make sure that what you write is super clear, okay? That's what it's all about. If you do want to get your letters checked, you can actually on e2language.com just sign up and pay for 1 letter to be checked. I think it's $19 US. One of our expert teachers will actually give you comprehensive feedback on your writing, including grammar, and links out to where you can improve your grammar and also the other criteria that we've just gone through as well. Cool. Okay, so if you want to succeed on your test, check out e2language.com. I hope that video was helpful. They are the new OET writing criteria as of August the 31st, 2019. If you're watching this after that date, that's just the way it is. Everything you need to do to pass your test is in there. It's obviously a lot more difficult on test day because what you're doing is juggling all of those different criteria. So I highly recommend that you do some practice. I highly recommend that you think about doing our mock test or getting some writing feedback or joining one of our courses where you can have access to all of our live classes. Cool. My name is Jay. Thank you very much for watching. I'll see you soon. Don't forget to subscribe.